What is going on, guys? Today we're going to do a little Tackle Tip Tuesday on how to fish the spawn and how I find fish when the water does get to spawning temperatures from 55 to 65 degrees. Hopefully you guys enjoy. I'm going to try to help you find some of those guys. Stay tuned, you won't be pissed. Alrighty guys, I'm going to try to show you some points of interest on Lake Minnetonka. It's not a lake that I've fished much, but I've been out there a couple times. I have everything right now shaded in blue that is less than 8 feet. So everything that's in white is deeper than 8 feet. When you're looking for these spawning areas, if you come up here, you have a whole bunch of blue area, deep water close by, a little funnel right there that they can go from deep water to shallow water really quickly. So this would be one of the first spots that I would try personally because you have deep water, you have a little funnel that they can move up and down super quickly to deep water. They can come back up, and you got a whole bunch of shallow area here. Look at this, they got all this water they can spawn in right back in here. Access to deep water, a little bit of a flat here they can spawn on, big flat here they can spawn on. Got cover nearby, another little funnel here that they can escape to deeper water, pull up if it gets warm. All this little area right in here they can move up to, slide back down. And I'd come in here, and the first thing that I would do is start throwing a spinnerbait around and try to locate the fish while I'm looking for beds. Maybe even throw a little topwater action, you know, spook, frog, anything along those lines. Ripping a chatterbait, throwing a spinnerbait. That's just one area right there. As you can see, if you come over to the next bay over, got a large spawning flat right here. They can pull up onto that easily. They can escape to deeper water. You want to try to find these areas that got these funnels like so, shallow water around, and stuff that's not really main lake stuff, because that stuff is gonna, I mean, you look at all this water that's got to warm up in this main lake area here. All that water has to warm up first. If you come back into a little nook and cranny of this little arm up here, or up here, over here, over here, up into here, where the water's gonna warm up the fastest. This little area over in here, a little bit there. This whole area right here. You're gonna wanna do is just, like I was saying, throw some spinner baits, throw a chatterbait, flip a jig, swim a jig, go until you find the fish, where they're located, where they're at. As you can see, if you come over here, all this area right back in here, you got a marina back in here. You got so much structure and cover that they can hold to. A lot of structure that's gonna warm up the water quickly. Got a little creek that comes in here right next to deep water. They can pull up and move down as they need. Whole bunch of area, like, you're not just flipping the banks around here. There can be fish bedded all out in here. It's hard to cover that much water with just a little jig, or, you know, throwing a Senko. But by throwing spinner baits, chatter baits, like, you know, moving baits, paddle tail swim baits, you can really locate where these fish are actually hanging out. Say they're hanging out right out in here, close to deep water, shallow enough where they can spawn. They can move up super shallow if they need and catch some sun. They can move back out. and go super deep if the cold front rolls through. But to break down an area like this, you know, where all this is less than 6 feet, you really got to be throwing moving baits until you find a concentration of fish. And once you find that concentration, it's just really key to slow down, put your trolling motor on 2, and just glass with your eyes until you find a big white circle, maybe a black circle even, just depending on the bottom. But just to find areas that the fish are actually holding to and cruising through. There's going to be a lot of males that move up first, find the beds, and the females are going to be just roaming throughout all this. I mean, say there's a milfoil patch that's that big right there out in front of this. There could be hundreds of beds that are in that little area right there, but you wouldn't be able to see one because there's so much milfoil or coontail, cabbage, I mean, etc., etc. But once you find that the fish are holding right there, then you really slow down, dissect that area right here, figure it out. Then you start flipping a jig. Then you start flipping a Texas rig with a worm. Then you just really slow down and figure out what these bass are holding to. It might be just a 6 inch depth change that these fish are really just honing in on and like a lot. But if you came back into here, I'm sure there's just endless possibilities of where bass would be spawning back in here. This would be a great place to throw a frog just to find these fish, a spook. Come back in the marina here and, you know, skip a sink underneath the docks. I mean, a lot of the bass will make their beds right underneath docks too, and you wouldn't even be able to see them because they have cover over them. But if you go in there, skip a jig underneath there, work it super slow, all of a sudden you're going to start catching fish. And it's just a day-to-day thing that not all the bass are going to come up at once and spawn. There's going to be tons of fish that hang out in their deep wintering areas, and there could be 5 fish up in here one day, and the next day you come back and there could be 30 fish all on beds, all just waiting for you to go catch them. It's not the easiest thing to catch them, especially when they're locked on and fully focused on actually spawning. But you can come back and maybe the fish aren't there a week before, maybe they're not there 2 weeks before, but then you come and then there's 1 fish in there. You catch 1, you come back the next day, you catch 3, you come back the next day, and all of a sudden, boom, you just see beds on beds on beds loaded in this whole area here. It can be a really fun time of the year. It can be a really slow time of the year too, where you only catch little fish. That's only part of the spawn. That's only when fish are pulling up. There's so many things that influence the fish, weather, moon, you name it, it can affect them. But I hope those are some tips that you guys can take onto the water, being slow, working your way around, finding the other places where you think these fish could be. Here's another spot. It even says there's lily pads here. That would be a great spot to try right back in here. Try to find those bedding bass. And especially with lily pads too, it's super hard to see those beds because the lily pads take up so much of the water that, you know, throwing a frog through there till you find where they're concentrated, then you can really go in and, you know, flip a jig or flip a Texas rig, you know, slow down and really catch where the big ones are at. But they got access to deep water from multiple sides. Got a little deep water hole right here. They can pull up, move down. Cold front comes through, they can cruise right back down this, break the edge. Next day rolls up, warm front comes back through, boom, they pull right back up, right back into those pads, and it's game over. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial of the lake map, just kind of showing you where to look for these fish. I mean, they're not always going to be in those areas, But those are good areas to look at first when you're trying to target these spawning fish. When I'm looking for the fish and trying to find out where they're concentrated, I like using a 7-foot to 7'2" medium power rod with 15-pound mono. That taper of the rod and the stretch of the mono won't pull that bait out of their mouth. You know, when you're fishing spinner baits, chatter baits, paddle tail swim baits, you want them really to eat it, and you don't want to rip it out of their mouth right when they bite. But when you do find a bed, it's time to bring out the boomstick. And what I like to use is my Dobyns Champion Series 766 flip with a loose BB1 Pro speed spool. And the lure I use is a craw type of bait most of the time, but you can use worm, you know, ribbon tail worm, just a regular worm, floating worm, I mean really anything. I like using a 3/8 ounce weight, some bobber stops, and a bead in between my weight and my hook. That bead is gonna kind of act like a craw digging down in the sand in the bed, and it's gonna make a little clanking noise like they're, you know, up and in there, and it's gonna call in those fish that aren't, you know, on the bed, but they're out just kind of cruising around it. I like using white colored baits or natural colored baits. The white baits are really nice just because you can see them. All of a sudden, your white, you know, that fish will swim in, your white bait will disappear. More times than not, it's in its mouth, and you just gotta hammer it home. It's hard to beat the natural colored baits because, you know, it matches the hatch. It's what's in the lake. It imitates the fish that, you know, they're normally used to eating. It's harder to see, yeah, but I feel like you get more bites with that. I got 17-pound fluorocarbon line, but that can really fluctuate just depending on the cover that I'm fishing. I bumped down to about 15-pound if there's, you know, nothing really there, and then I could bump up to 20-pound to 25-pound if I'm flipping around heavy cover like wood or thick weeds. But what I like to do is flip it past the bed once I've found it, you know, 4 or 5 feet if possible, and then I like to just drag it super slow right onto the bed, and then once it's on the bed, let a little bit of line out, and then just shake that line, just the line. You don't want to move the bait at all, you just want to shake that line. It really kind of just gets that bead clicking, gets the appendages dancing, kind of just really irritates the fish. And then sometimes those fish will come up, they'll swipe at it, you swing, you miss. I mean, we've all been there, it sucks. But it's nice to have a little rebound bait. And what I like to throw on my rebound bait is just a regular Senko. You can either Texas rig it with a small bullet weight. I got a weighted head here. Or you can throw it weightless. But I like having a little weight just because, you know, when it does get on that bed, it stands up. Just do the same exact thing you do with that Texas rig. Throw it past it, bring it on, and then just shake that slack line, and that thing will just get dancing. Irritate the fish, make them all mad. They'll come over and they'll smoke it. It's nice to have one of these rigged up and ready to go at all times. I mean, even if you're fishing with a partner and they're flipping, and all of a sudden, boom, they miss one or they break off. I mean, you can fish a little bit further, come back around, find that fish again, and more oftentimes than not, a little Senko is all it'll take to get them going. Hope you guys have enjoyed this Tackle Tip Tuesday. If you guys have any other questions about you know, any of the gear that I use, what knots I tie, anything fishing related, and you want to know something more about it, leave a comment down below. I'd be more than happy to you know, tackle that adventure and give you little tips on, you know, how to catch more fish and put more fish on the ice or in the live well. So hope you guys have enjoyed this Tackle Tip Tuesday, and there are plenty more to come. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys could go down here, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching.